Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. My name is Willie Hassell. I am your host. I am your gatekeeper to the dark side. Your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And yes, she is lovely. She is mysterious. She is mystical. She is Lynn Nickerson. Good evening, Lynn.
Good evening, Willie. That always gets a giggle out of me.
I know it does.
How are you doing tonight?
That's my favorite part of the whole week. Just to get a little smile out of you on that one.
Because I don't smile too much, huh? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't say
okay,
that.
Fine.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Well, I bet our guest is happier than we are with the weather.
Oh, I know it. He's out in sunny California somewhere.
I'm just a little envious.
You're just a little envious.
Yeah, we have freezing temps here right now.
I'm more than a little bit envious myself. So, shall I go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yes, please do.
Instead of keeping him waiting on the phone there, tonight we welcome to the show Preston Dennett. Preston began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and co-workers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. He is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 16 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. His articles have appeared in numerous magazines, including Fate, lost my place again, Atlantis Rising, MUFON UFO Journal, UFO Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, and others. He has appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including History Channel's Deep Sea UFOs and UFO Hunters. His research has been presented in the LA Times, the LA Daily News, the Dallas Morning Star, and many other newspapers. He lectures across the United States on various topics, subjects of the paranormal, and it is our pleasure to welcome him back to Spirit Radio once again for his second visit. Let's please welcome Preston Dennett. Good evening, Preston.
Good evening, Preston. Welcome.
Hi, Willie. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Thanks for having me back on the show. I'm excited.
Oh, it's a pleasure. How have you been?
Oh, doing great. Keeping busy. Always working on more books and articles and interviewing more people.
Wonderful.
Good. Keeping busy. And I'll bet you're enjoying your weather a lot more than we are.
Well, we did just have a big rainstorm, and now it's pretty cold. It's like 60 degrees.
Yeah, that's damp.
Not bad.
Yeah, when the wind blows and it's 60, it's cold.
Yeah.
In the tropics, anyway.
Yeah.
But I'd take it right now.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Well, Preston, let me ask you. You're sort of secretive about your past history. When you had your epiphany in 1986, what were you planning on doing with your life?
I was thinking of becoming a science fiction writer. That's what I wanted to do. I, was taking a lot of science classes in college and was majoring in narrative writing. So that's what I was thinking about doing.
Have you kind of done that on the side?
The boat thing.
Have you done it on the side?
The boat thing came kind of out of left field, honestly. I was not looking for it.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing that your whole family were experiencers.
Yeah, and your whole career direction just changed just like that, huh?
Yeah, it really was not good news for me. Just finding out UFOs were real kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was kind of forced to reevaluate things, honestly.
You weren't quite ready for that, huh?
Kind of like when you're told there's no Santa Claus, and that's what I would equate it to. It's very devastating. We'll talk about that later, Willie.
Okay.
I'll explain it to you.
All right.
But tonight we're going to focus on one of your 16 books, which is The Extraterrestrial Visitations, True Accounts of Contact. And for me, the million-dollar question would be to believe or not to believe. And my reply would be to answer with another question, which is, how could one not believe after having read this book and weighing the evidence? You've got some very powerful information in there.
Yeah, those were my most expensive cases up to that time.
Expensive?
So these are all cases that are, not just a sighting of a UFO in the sky. These were cases involving actual face-to-face contact or some type of interaction involving missing time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, these were major cases, each and every one of them. Almost all of them involved multiple witnesses. A good number of them involved some type of physical evidence. So there's definitely a lot of evidence out there for sure.
How would you categorize this book as being different from some of the other books on abductions?
Well, I would say that there are a number of things that make it different, actually. I tried to really stick to what the witnesses were saying, and so much of the book is in the witnesses' own words, which, a lot of books don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I found out that a lot of books that are written on abductions rely very much on hypnosis. And that's not true in this book either. I think it's only one case in the book involves use of hypnosis at all. And easily it could have, survived without it. And there are other things I found that were kind of unusual, I think, that are commonly reported, which is the existence of praying mantis-type ETs,
right,
which you don't hear a lot about.
No.
As well as human-looking ETs, which are pretty rare.
That's true.
Another case involving what appears to be the United States military present on the UFO during an abduction.
I know, I read that, and that was really shocking.
So,
Can you expand on that? Have you heard?
Kind of surprised me. Healing cases, underground bases, prophecies, things like this. So it was quite a lot of going on in these cases.
Can you elaborate on some of the other cases where you encountered military types on board the crafts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the case that was in this book involved a lady by the name of Melinda Leslie.
Oh, yes.
Who was actually kind of skeptical of UFOs until going out to Area 51, where she was able, with a group of other people, by the way, to observe these objects coming in and out of the base, which were clearly not, planes or helicopters or anything like that.
Right.
And following this, she began to have experiences and realized, she had been having them for quite some time. And on one occasion, she woke up and there was a bird in her room.
A dove, yeah.
Somehow gotten in there through the closed window. And there was other weird things that were happening to her until she went out looking for UFOs in the high desert in California with her friends, and they had a missing time experience. And she remembered it without hypnosis in the days that followed. She recalled that they were all taken aboard this UFO, this metallic craft, which had parked there right along the highway, stopped their car, took them out of the car and aboard the UFO, and basically examined them and performed various procedures on them. And so while all this was happening to him, there was a man in full military dress standing at attention, watching this whole thing going on.
I found that disturbing.
Yes, very, very.
What's your take on that, Preston?
This is not the only case I have like this.
Really?
and I found actually that there's kind of a high proportion of people who have experienced abductions who also have military in their family.
Yes, I know.
Another case I investigated involved a family whose daughter was having experiences, and this involved fully conscious experiences where she'd wake up and there'd be these grays around her bed. They told her, don't be afraid, we won't hurt you. We need you to come with us. She's like, no, you can't take me, I have a job. And next thing she knows, she's inside this room, and they told her, we're going to cut your arm. She protested, but they did it anyway. And then they told her, well, we have to do an operation on your brain. And at this point, she just passed out, and she woke up the next morning, and there was a cut still on her arm. And she was completely freaked out. And I interviewed her whole family, and I found out that the father worked for the military, some confidential project that he would not speak about, even to his family. So this is the sort of thing I'm running into. And other people are telling me that they've seen the military working with ETs. Certainly that's been reported at China Lake, Edwards Air Force Base, Rendlesham Forest up in England, up there. So
all right. Well, before you move on from that, why do you suppose it is members of the military family? Because I thought primarily it had to do with bloodlines. Why do you suppose they'd be interested in the daughter of the guy who's working on a black op?
I think that this is one of the areas where ETs have kind of infiltrated our society.
Oh.
This is a very pervasive phenomena. People don't realize that. And when UFOs first came, they were often seen hovering over military bases, over dams, over nuclear installations. They're mapping our entire society.
I know.
The military is, a very important part of our society, and they are in with the military for sure.
Yeah, I think they're in bed with the military too.
Again and again and again.
Why?
Our own military is neck deep in this stuff, holding UFOs. There was reportedly a secret meeting at Edwards Air Force Base with Eisenhower and ETs, and there's a number of other stories circulating like that, which are getting a lot of
exposure now. Yeah. Why do you suppose they operated on her brain?
That's kind of a very difficult question to answer, but something that I hear from other people, and what's caused me to conclude is the ETs are very interested in us for some reason. Certainly they know much more about the human body than we do.
Or at least the emotional structure, the emotional matrix.
Right, they're very interested in us, our emotions as well.
Right.
So they're absolutely fascinated with us for some reason. I think one of the reasons could be, and this has turned up in a couple of cases at least, that they're fascinated by our abilities to go out of body or to detect ghosts.
Oh, really?
Or to have precognition and things like this. That fascinates them because apparently that's a pretty rare ability.
Oh.
And also to really feel emotions.
Yeah, the emotional range they're interested in.
About that.
So I guess actually...
There's something unique about us that they love.
Yeah.
That turns up a lot.
I guess actually in intelligence, they're probably far superior to us, but
they
don't have the emotional.
No, they don't have the emotional component.
Have,
no.
So that's
particularly the Greys, anyway.
Some they do and some they don't. I think that there's different types of Greys. I've certainly got a lot of cases where people have had very emotional experiences, and the ETs were not unkind to them really at all. One case in the book was really unusual, involving this lady, a real estate agent, and later a psychologist. She had experiences her whole life. Even as a little girl, she remembers waking up once, and she was mysteriously outside, and there was this UFO chasing her, and a beam of light hit her and sucked her right up into the ship. And she woke up, and there was all these sticks and leaves in her bed.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
yeah.
She got in trouble for it.
And her parents didn't believe her. Yeah.
Right. This happened more than once. And later in life, she's driving along this road on her motorcycle alone, late at night in these mountains in, I believe it was New Jersey. And she wrecked her motorcycle. This is one of the oddest cases I've heard.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah.
She it was an old-fashioned motorcycle that had one of those Kickstarters that could only be started that way, and she bent it all up in the accident. She was wondering what she was going to do because this was a very isolated road and late at night. And this is when these ETs appeared. And she said they looked very much human, except they were wearing jumpsuits or nothing at all. They were bald. They had very large, dark eyes. But, with sunglasses and clothes on, could have passed for human.
Mm-hmm.
And she said they just walked right up, picked up the bike, and one of them looked at her while the other bent down and straightened the Kickstarter, fixed the bike, and then they both stepped back and motioned her to get on the bike, which she did, and she took off, kind of freaked out. But in that case, the ETs were friendly to her.
Yeah, true concern.
They helped her.
Yeah. It's amazing they had the strength to fix the kickstand.
Yeah, they have this ability to manipulate physical matter in a way that we don't.
Oh,
They
well,
can
that's
do that
incredible.
with instruments, apparently, or in some cases, mind power. It's unclear. In each
Okay.
case, but apparently, in that case, it was just using their hands.
Kind of handy to have around when you're broke down out in the middle of nowhere.
It's not always the case, though.
It's an unusual case, mind you. The only one I have like it, but there are other. This is what I'm finding more and more is the cases don't follow the pattern that is often outlined
A lot of different
in some of
elements.
the other books. They're all unique.
Well, getting back to Melissa, Jack, and Robert, the people that went to Area 51, there were a couple of very odd other things that happened there, too. I was kind of curious as to why the ETs seemed to escort Jack and Robert from their vehicle, and then Melissa, they lifted out. They levitated and probably used the molecular dissolution beam me up Scotty method. Why? I just think that's really odd that they use two different methods of getting a hold of them.
Yeah, it is odd. I think part of it is how a person is reacting. So in some cases,
Yeah.
they have to put a person largely to sleep. And this is something that they actually call doorway amnesia. Almost nobody remembers being taken on board. They suddenly find themselves inside the UFO.
Yeah.
But and so someone is reacting with a lot of fear. That's what's going to happen. They're going to be completely put out. Whereas
Kind of put them
someone
out.
less
Okay.
fearful might be allowed to remain conscious and is handled differently. That could be what's happening in that case.
That
I don't
could
know.
be. Well, it's almost like a question of mind control. I guess I'd say mind control. The next point in this whole episode that kind of that relates to that is the ETs took Melissa into another room and they put some kind of black metal and fabric bag over her head and they constrained her and they started pushing her so that she felt off balance and they kept catching her. And it seemed to me that this was sort of a game that had a twofold purpose, and one was to get her over her fear of falling. But I'm also thinking that maybe they were trying to lull her into a false sense of trusting them to their own advantage and not hers. In other words, she was succumbing to mind control. Do you feel that was an element of mind control and that lesson of trust?
There's sort of an ambiguity there. Is it the Stockholm syndrome, or are these guys out here to save us? It's not really clear either way because there's no evidence of them doing anything sadistic or anything like that.
Yeah.
Here to scare us or hurt us, nor is there evidence that they're here to save us. That was an odd experience for her, and very unusual. And it reminds me of that acting exercise.
It does.
A trust fall.
Yeah, trust fall, and then they.
Then behind you, you fall and they catch you.
That's right.
And they did another experience with her where they actually dropped her out of a UFO.
I know, I read that.
Plunged, good 100 feet before catching her, and did this repeatedly until she got over her fear of falling. So they're brutal teachers. I don't know if that's exactly what's going on, but that's
Well,
result.
it's certainly a lesson of trust, but
It's quite a way to learn a lesson.
yeah, but it's a double-edged sword, I think, because she is completely under their control. In that episode also, Robert didn't have really good recall, but at some point, did he ever reveal the information that he felt was coming through the helmet that he was wearing, that set of headphones?
Well, it was to make a UFO detector, actually.
Is that what that was? I thought it was James they gave that information to and not Robert.
Oh, all right.
So James just kept saying it's information, or the ET said to Melissa, we're giving him information. But I don't know, maybe it was James, because they didn't have time alone with James except while they were examining him, right?
Right. There was two guys in there, and, they were each treated differently, so not all of them have complete recall. But one of them had a scar, which the ETs were very interested in. Another was placed in a chair where he was apparently given information.
You know what?
I believe was involving a UFO detector.
Right, because wasn't he the one pointing the light up in the sky trying to find UFOs when they were going down the road? It was Robert.
Right.
Right,
Like
so
many of them, other witnesses, they had what I would term, what I would call an electromagnetic effect, where a UFO, affects a car engine or the headlights or the radio or a flashlight or, a television or a car battery, things like this. And that was true in that case, with flashlights and a scanner that they brought.
And they've stopped working.
Right.
So that makes sense that's the information they were feeding him through the helmet.
Yeah, apparently the design for the detector is pretty simple, too. It involves a device involving two magnets. When a UFO flies by, it disrupts a magnetic field. Mm-hmm. So
did he ever
easy to detect.
Make practical...
I don't know if he ever got it built or not.
Oh, okay.
But, it was fascinating.
It was fascinating. Well, you know what, Preston, we're nearing the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back with some more questions. Can you sit tight for a minute?
All right.
All right, we'll be right back. Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break. The video portion of Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, is sponsored by Spirit Chasers Paranormal, a paranormal investigation and research organization in Northampton, New Hampshire. Professional, respectful, courteous. Check us out at spiritchasersparanormal.com or email Willie at spiritchasersparanormal.com.
Welcome back. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, on WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, West End. And programming on Portsmouth Community Radio is made possible by you, our members, and by Living Innovations, helping Seacoast seniors and people with disabilities to lead a full and happy lives at home and in the community. For more information, visit livinginnovations.com. And Lynn, do we have some upcoming guests?
We certainly do. Let me see who's on the roster here. For December 20th, we're welcoming Fritz Zimmerman, and he'll be joining us to discuss giant skeletons found in the Ohio Valley. on December 27th. It'll be a Merry Christmas. We're taking the holiday off, and we'll be airing a rerun show. On January 1st, we're welcoming Merrill Fankhauser to Spirit Radio for his first appearance. He studied extensively what he believes to be an alien undersea base off the coast of Malibu, California, and this probably relates to what we're going to discuss tonight as well.
We should ask Preston about that.
Yes, we will. And January 10th, we're welcoming Bob and Betty Luca. And Betty is the subject of the Andreessen Affair book by Ray Fowler. Raymond Fowler lives in Maine, and he did extensive interrogating, investigating, and regression of Betty Luca in particular, but I believe Bob as well. And it's very much the same sort of thing that Preston does. And this happened back in the 80s, I believe. Very interesting information. So that's about, that wraps it up for our upcoming guest list.
Okay, so with that, why don't we go back to the phone with tonight's guest, Preston Dennett. Welcome back, Preston.
Welcome back, Preston.
Hello.
Hi. So let me see if we can get on to, I found them all very fascinating, all of your stories, but there were certain things that I hadn't heard of before and that kind of stuck out in my mind. And one of them was Paul Nelson from Southern California, and he's the man who eventually became a doctor. And he described one of his abduction trips. We were just talking about the military being involved, and he said that the walls appeared to be that of a cavern with rock-like walls rather than metallic walls that you might find on a ship. And it kind of sounds like, the military DUMBs, the deep underground military bases. Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's what it was?
Well, that's what he thought, and certainly I think it is possible. Absolutely.
Well, he got out alive, thank goodness.
Yeah, and well, it was a very interesting case that involved two witnesses, actually, on Catalina Island.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just teenagers when they had a missing time experience right there in Avalon Cove. And a couple of months later, this guy went back home, and he was here in the San Fernando Valley in California when he woke up because he heard something walking in the house, and he went down the hall and he saw a shadow of this very, very small being as it ran outside and went away. He thought, well, that's really odd. Looked like it's a short little being with a very large head. Its shadow was exerted there on the wall, and he didn't think much of it until later he actually did go under hypnosis. This is the one case in the book involving hypnosis. And under hypnosis, he recalls being taken to this underground area. This was, he went under hypnosis to the incident on Catalina Island.
Oh.
And he recalled being taken to this underground area with his friend, where his friend apparently was the target of the whole abduction.
Oh.
His friend was taken to another place and examined, while Paul was just kind of placed on a bench there and looked at this underground cavern, which was pretty large, actually. And he had the feeling it was underground because there were rock walls and that there was some computer-like equipment, which he didn't think looked very complex, but not anything he recognized. And most unusual was ETs were not one I hear a lot of, which was I would describe as praying mantis type.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it had very, very large insect-like eyes and actually was wearing this kind of weird cloak-like thing. And he wasn't afraid. The whole experience was actually pretty unemotional for him. And that's basically what he recalled. He's not the only person in this area who's recalled being taken to an underground area. Mostly when I talk to someone, I pretty much predict they're going to tell me they're taken inside this rounded room and it's very clean and the light is strange and things like this. But that's not what he was describing, and that's what other people in this area have described as well. So it's pretty unusual. I do think there is a base in this area.
Yeah, I think so too. But you think that was on Catalina Island then? Or on the mainland?
on Catalina Island. I do have other abduction cases. There's another abduction case that occurred on the far side of the island, another that occurred on top of the island.
Oh.
But there's others that occur all along the coastline there. So I'm not sure where this base is. The Santa Catalina Channel is right there, and this is where most of the cases I'm getting are of underwater UFO activity. So I've got 50 or 100 cases of people who have seen UFOs coming in and out of the water.
In and out of the water, I know it. Before we get away from that, I wanted to ask you, where do you suppose this praying mantis type species comes from?
That's the million-dollar question. We suspect the grays come from Zeta reticula, but even that, the evidence is not really that good. All we have is Betty Hill's map, which is about it, and a few other scattered cases where that name has come up. But certainly names have been, some people have gotten names from various ETs saying that they've come from Arcturus or Orion or Andromeda and things like this. But usually they're much more tight-lipped about it. One case I investigated, which is in the book actually, a couple had an experience in Arizona. They asked the ETs where they were from. The ET said, "Oh, we're from a place you don't know about yet." Very,
I don't know why they do that.
Avoiding the answer.
They think we're all stupid.
Politicians avoid the question.
Yeah.
But I can understand they don't want to, tell us where their home is. We've got kind of militaristic in a lot of ways, violent
to
each other even, and given too much power, like a UFO, it could cause a lot of damage. So that's one of the reasons I think that they're reluctant to tell us too much about themselves.
Well, wasn't one of the tests, one of the abductees was given a gun and she was told to shoot one of them? They told her to shoot one of them? I think they were testing her temperament and her tendency to violence. Do you recall that?
Right. This does turn up very, very rarely. It seems to be that they're doing this to either explore our emotions or to test us or to, teach people lessons. It's hard to say. I don't have a lot of cases like this.
Yeah. Well, then...
so I can only speak to that in a limited fashion.
Yeah. How about Marianne the waitress and the E.T. Kevin that she was channeling? I found that really unusual, too. And Kevin's origins.
Another unusual case.
And
the thing I think is a lot of these unusual cases don't get publicity because they don't fit the mold. And, this is what I'm finding I'm writing a new book very much like this book, which is teaching me that it's not just your standard abduction scenario. And certainly with this lady, it wasn't. She was having a series of UFO sightings which were relatively close up. And when that happens, I know that there's kind of interaction there. UFOs don't really, when they show themselves, they know it. They know who they're showing themselves to. And I think there's often a reason for it. And the closer a UFO is to a person, the higher the chances that it's more than just a sighting. So that was true in her case. When she started suddenly channeling through automatic writing. This is another thing that turns up now and then with abductees in particular who have kind of moved beyond the fear phase, I guess you would call it, the fear stage of their abductions, and are sort of embracing it. While ETs often examine people, the second most common thing they do is give messages about environmental disaster, or nuclear proliferation, or alternative healing, or things like this. And a lot of issues which come through channeling sessions. But for some reason, a number of abductees do become channelers, and this was happening with her. And this ET gave her a lot of information. He called himself Kevin, which I thought was very interesting.
Kind of cute.
Obviously, that's just a name that ET, used. I think to make her comfortable. But she described a typical gray type ET, which she kind of saw there mentally in her mind's eye as it came through, and it told her that they had lived here for a very, very long large earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting case for sure, and it really freaked her out.
She was not only
She was having also trouble with ghosts at the time.
Oh, was she really?
Much more scary.
Oh my goodness. She wasn't only channeling, she began with automatic writing, which she wasn't familiar with, and she was automatically writing with her left hand, and she's right-handed. That was unusual.
Yes, which speaks to, I think, the veracity of the case.
Right, exactly.
She wasn't looking for this.
And she just seemed very, very articulate to me and quite interesting. And then Kevin, he says that he's from an underwater base. I don't know if it was the one off the coast of Malibu. Didn't that take place kind of in Northern California?
This was actually not that far north, up in Santa Barbara, which is the northern end here, sort of the Santa Catalina Channel, and where all these cases are taking place.
Okay, so not too far from this supposed...
Really not far at all, especially as the UFO flies, because these things obviously can go quite fast.
So what else, have you heard anything else about this brand of gray that lives underwater?
This is one of the frustrating things about UFO research. I'm not sure what to make of. Each person I talk to seems to see a different version of grays, and not completely. I mean, I have some that, but basically it's a pretty narrow margin. I mean, if you look at the variance within the human species, it's not that big of a variance in grays. There's other reports from about 3 to 4 foot tall, and one's upwards of 4 or 5. But for the most part, I can't match one species to another.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or say that this is the same ET that was seen in another case. So
Well,
it's very frustrating trying to say, well, this case involving Marianne the waitress was unique. I hadn't had any other cases with grays, reporting that they had bases underwater.
Mm-hmm. Unusual. Well, it could be that was one of the grays that are typically in charge, whereas many of them that are encountered by the abductees are the robotic type of grays. Maybe that's what the difference is, and this one was intelligent with a soul.
Right. I would imagine that is the case, because she wasn't experiencing, traumatic abductions where she was taken on board and examined by robotic-like things with no emotion.
Yeah, he seemed to be benevolent, and he kept pressing the point that they weren't into nuclear weapons and they had no nuclear warheads. So that was kind of reassuring.
Right. I don't think the ETs are here to, hurt us. And certainly there is a lot of them warning about nuclear proliferation, where they're turning off missiles over a nuclear base in South Dakota, or they're hovering over a nuclear power station in New York, upstate New York, which is having a crack in one of its reactors or something like this, a problem. So they're here to warn us more than anything.
I've noticed that.
Evidence is showing. In fact, I wrote a book called UFO Healings, which outlined more than 100 cases of people who've been healed as a result of a close encounter.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. There was I forgot which one it was in the book now, the woman woke up and she had puncture wounds in her ankles and bruises on her legs.
Right. I think you're talking about another case I investigated in Chatsworth, California, which actually involved a group of people. One lady, she was sleeping in, this actually took place in a pretty crowded suburb, in a house that was full of people. She woke up because she felt this pain in her ankle, and she looked up, and she had a lot of trouble waking up and moving and speaking, and
really
broke the spell of whatever was holding her down, and saw this thing run out of her room, right out through the closed window, and into the alley there, where she turned and looked and saw this egg-shaped craft. And it looked completely white, kind of metallic or ceramic even, and pretty large, filling up the whole alley there, and it took off straight up. This thing entered into it, and it took off straight up. and her ankle was pretty sore and sore all day, actually. And it turned out on that night, her friend had also had an encounter. So it was a bizarre case.
Was that her roommate? Was it someone living with her?
Excuse me?
Was it a roommate that experienced something?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I had another question for you, Preston. What do you suppose, why do you suppose there appears to be a pattern of certain types of species of entities that are sighted in certain countries? Like in Brazil, they've kind of got some hairy dwarfs. And then like in Mexico, there were sighted flying humanoids. And the Greys in particular seem to be the ones that are in contact with us here in the United States. Do you think that maybe there's some kind of genetic connection? Like they're interested in those that are more closely related to them genetically?
This is a great question, and something I've pondered for sure.
Have you?
Oh, yeah, because I have noticed this. There is a strange kind of geographical distribution.
Yeah.
Certainly there's a lot more reports of gray ET abductions here in the United States, whereas Europe has a lot more very human-looking
Right.
ETs. And like you said, in Brazil, it's a lot more of the dwarf or miniature humanoid, often hairy type thing. So there is a geographical distribution there that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
That it's hard to account for, and we can only speculate. In the United States, of course, there's a lot of reports, kind of almost shoved out as rumors, but seems to be more and more corroborated that our government set up some sort of deal with the gray-type ETs.
That's a good point. Yeah.
To abduct us. So that could explain preponderance of gray-type in the United States.
Yeah.
And another reason, which I think is probably pretty powerful, the genetics is a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. But I was thinking this could be largely due to the media. Because back in the 50s, there was a lot of reports of human-looking aliens in the media, from various people, friendly aliens, and this kind of disappeared.
That's right.
And was panned by a lot of researchers. But, it really went underground. It didn't stop. Because I've talked to a lot of people now who have seen human-looking aliens. Fear cells, I think, more in these types of cases are hard to convince people.
That could be why.
So, often these people will remain silent. But I think this whole contactee movement was kind of pushed underground.
Yeah.
And I think that these other types of ETs are being seen in the United States. And that there's more and more bleed through, I've noticed.
Yeah.
There are now people seeing grays in Europe and Russia and things like this. Still, you have all types of ETs, and they seem to be different in different countries. That is hard to explain, and I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, there are preponderances. Even Billy Meyer, he seems to be seeing a lot of the humanoids, or in the past anyway, the humanoid beings from the Pleiades, I believe, are his contacts.
Right.
They're pretty humanoid.
A guy who also, in Malibu, had claimed to have had a contact with the Pleiadians.
Oh, really?
So these sort of, there are a lot more cases involving human-like aliens than people, I think, realize.
Yeah. I think I met one in Sedona, but that's another story. But I was working in a supermarket, and he came through my line, and darn if he didn't read my mind. And there was something very serene and foreign about him, very gentle yet very neutral. And I had a very quick conversation with him, and I kept wondering, I just have a feeling that he's an ET. It was the oddest thing, and he said very little except, there's all kinds of light around you. And I'm thinking, oh, he's just another New Ager. But he went on to predict that I'd be leaving there, and I left that position very soon. It was just a very odd encounter, and coupled with the feeling that he gave me, I just think I ran into a humanoid ET in Sedona.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm writing a book, UFOs over Arizona, right now.
Are you really?
And I was contracted to do it, and I'm halfway through it. And it's kind of following up, some of my other books which cover other states, and I found this was really interesting. You brought that up. I found that pretty much in each state there was 5 or 10 cases at least where people have seen ETs in public places.
Really?
By that I mean hotels or restaurants or casinos or subways, cafes, just places you would never ever expect. Train stations.
How do they get the feeling that they know that they're ETs?
Well, in some cases it's absolutely obvious witness, and no one else can apparently see the ET, which is what's described as gray type, the typical gray, which is
okay.
uniform, and a big head, and gray skin, large eyes, the whole deal. Others describe very unusual looking beings. Others describe a telepathic type contact.
Okay.
Very much like what you're
right.
Exactly what you're describing.
Right.
I do have to mention here, Preston, we only have about 3 minutes left. We're getting really close to the end of the hour.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so
I know it goes fast, doesn't it?
I've got another burning question then before we sign up.
Go ahead.
I was noting the differences, not only in the shapes of the craft, but the lighting. And there's such a variety of lighting. There's a variety of the way it pulses, the way it blinks. There's a variety of colors. And I got to thinking after I read a couple of episodes where a couple of the people felt that the lights were they had a hypnotic effect. Do you suppose that that's part of the reason that there is this variety of color?
Yes, and this is actually something I'm really glad you brought this up, too.
Oh, good.
Why are UFOs lit up like Christmas trees?
Yeah.
Seriously, are these all detecting devices that are so beautiful? I don't think so. I think my theory right now is that a lot of these lights come on for hypnosis.
Yeah.
To people to a trance state.
And to calm them down.
Right. And certainly one thing I've noticed over and over again is when someone sees a UFO with these bright, bright lights, they can't look away. They are entranced. They're absolutely entranced. Some actually are struck by these beams of lights. Say that they feel all their emotions become almost euphoric as they're sucked up into this light.
So it's got a calming effect for them, and that does make sense. Just so they don't go berserk,
Yeah.
Sort of crowd control.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Calm them down first before we bring them aboard. Yeah.
Because I've
They
seen...
can do things with light that we can't do. They know so much about light. Healing, levitating, moving through solid objects,
Right.
Hypnotizing people. They've got it down.
It seems very purposeful. I've seen solid red UFOs. I've seen solid phosphorescent green. And then I've seen regular metallic. There's such a variety. But I haven't seen the light show that some of these people have witnessed.
Some of the color might be due to whether they're coming or going, which is people have also noticed. I'm not sure if it's bright blue suddenly when they're coming down and slowing down, and then they flare up red when they're leaving. This is how I believe it is. A kind of red shift there and blue shift, which would make sense from a physics standpoint.
That brings me to one other question, and maybe you're familiar with this, Preston. I have often seen these stationary crafts in the sky, and they seem to be white with a blinking blue and red light, and I see them all the time, and they're stationary, and yet over a course of several days, they may take a different position in the sky. Now, I know that there are some reports on the MUFON, I don't know, wherever you report sightings. Are you familiar with these sightings?
With who?
With these particular sightings of red, white, and blue stationary lights in the sky?
Not these in particular, but I've heard of cases like these with large motherships that will stay in place for long periods of time.
With that color combination?
Not exactly, but
that is
for sure.
That is my personal feeling, that there are several ships stationed out there that are monitoring us for whatever reason. I feel as though we are being monitored and watched.
Oh yeah, I'm certain that's true. They're
You think so?
really on top of things, these ETs, knowing where people are almost at all times. as I mentioned earlier, are pretty pervasive in our society in a kind of invisible way. I think they're trying to get us to evolve to the point where we'll both survive, ourselves.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Boy, that's going to be a fantastic software system.
All the abductees do agree there's going to be big changes on our planet, and we do seem to be having a lot of, changes. And I think we're going to have open official contact sooner or later.
We've got to.
Well, I hope so.
This can't stay under wraps forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming to a head.
We're trending towards it, for sure.
Yeah.
Closure with the government as well as by the ETs.
That's right.
I think we'll see it. I do think we'll see it. They're not going away. We know that.
Yeah, no, they're not going away.
And I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later. But on that note, we are out of time, Preston. But we do have, of course, time. If you want to give out any websites where you can find your books or anything like that, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. And anyone who's interested can contact me through my website, which is my name, actually. If you just Google my name, Preston Dennett, it'll take you right to it. The actual website address is prestondennett.weebly.com. And I have all my books up there with excerpts. You can email me also through my website if you have a question or a story that you'd like to share. But yeah, I appreciate being on the show. Thanks very much.
Oh, we appreciate you coming on the show.
And Preston, are you working on a book right now, you said?
Yeah, UFOs over Arizona.
Oh, great. What's the release date that you know of, or is there one?
That'll probably be late 2015, if I can get it done. That probably the beginning of 2016.
Oh, I want to read
another
that.
one coming out the beginning of next year, which is UFOs over Nevada.
Oh, great.
I'm excited about that.
Right.
That'll be released in a few months.
Okay.
Great, you're going to have to talk to us about that. All right.
Well,
Great.
we do thank you very much, Preston.
Thank you,
for
Preston.
joining us once again on the show.
It's
a
an
pleasure to talk to you.
interesting, informative pleasure.
Yes, my pleasure too. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you and good night.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, Preston. And that is it for Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, for one more week.
And once again, thank you for listening. Good night, everybody.